Hi everybody, it's Josh with Talk About Trek, and we're back again to do the thing that we like to do most here on this channel, which is to talk about Star Trek books. And we are deep into the Gateways series. As you can see, we have just finished up book 4 of 7, which is the Deep Space Nine installment here, which was Demons of Air and Darkness by Keith RA DeCandido. And from the cover here, the galaxy's most relentless predator clashes with its deadliest soldier. Which is an interesting premise and idea, right? And then here on the cover, as you can see, you get to see, obviously you have a Hirogen hunter there in the back. And then you have this lady with a blue face. And for the life of me, I don't know who she is supposed to represent in the book. So if anyone out there does know, this was cover art here by Cliff Nielsen. And, I mean, it looks very nice, but I don't know who that is. There are some Andorians that are in there. I mean, this is an Andorian. I don't know. I guess it's meant to be the Andorian science officer, or perhaps his mother. But just it's a weird choice for the cover, I guess. But we discovered that here together by looking closely. Anyway, from the back, Star Trek, Deep Space Nine. Once they moved from world to world in a single step, through innumerable doors that span the galaxy. They were masters of space, and to those who feared them, they were demons of air and darkness. But long ago, they left their empire and their miraculous technology behind. Now someone has found the key to it, and all those doors have been flung open. Gateways, demons of air and darkness. A world near Deep Space Nine, threatened with destruction from the distant Delta Quadrant, becomes the focus of a massive rescue effort as Colonel Kira Nerys, her crew, and some unexpected allies fight to avert disaster on a planetary scale. Meanwhile, as Lieutenant Nog and Ensign Thirishar Chthane. Alright, so that's probably Chthane on the cover there, okay? Search for a way to shut down the spatial portals forever. Quark becomes involved in a dangerous game that could determine once and for all who will control the gateways. So wow, yeah, right there from the front cover and the back blurb, you've already got so much going on. You've got this character Chthane, Lieutenant Nog doing something, you've got Quark doing something, apparently you've got a relentless predator and a deadly soldier clashing and doing something. So it seems to be you have a lot going on in this story. And if you have read the series, you go back, the previous story was kind of the same way too. A lot of different threads going on in the story. But these people are pros. Keith R.A. DeCandido knows what he's doing. And he can write this stuff backwards and forwards. And even though there are many different threads and things going on, the book feels well put together, well fleshed out. And I feel that even though it doesn't focus too much on one thing, the story never kind of sags for that. There's not one particular line in the story that you don't like or isn't very interesting. Everything kind of goes along, plays its own part, and also gives all your favorite characters their chances to do something. You get some surprises in there, which was very fun. There's some nice surprises in there, some interesting moments, and just some, for me, I always wanted to see Nog advance, and so this is getting to see Lieutenant Nog. He's taken over engineering at the station, and then, so I'm glad that the book does focus a good bit on Nog. And then you also have the character of Lt Vaughn, and he's the Starfleet officer who takes over as Kira's number one, basically, after Sisko is gone. Also, they do have Bashir and Ezri Dax in the story, but they do play a very small part in it. They're the new characters that come in, kind of play bigger parts in it, and again, it just kind of jumps back and forth between these, different stories. So you have a very interesting mix of action, typical Star Trek science, space space action, land action, ship action, just kind of like a little bit of everything. And then, of course, a big problem to overcome, which is kind of, I mean, that's got to be like a key in a Star Trek novel. There has to be some big unifying problem that draws them together that they've got to overcome. And there is a big one here that kind of drives the whole story forward. So, really fun. And from what I was reading in the wonderful book about books, this is kind of like, I don't know, like a driving force kind of kicking off more of this Deep Space Nine series. And this book picks up right after the Section 31. I don't know what happened in that, but kind of, so it's between two, I don't know, sections of this Deep Space Nine lit verse, which is, out of all of the books, I think I've probably dived into the least, which is something I do mean to rectify, because there is just so much, I don't know, so much good stuff that I want to read about, and Nog is definitely one of them, and kind of seeing his continuing adventures, and getting to know more about this Elias Vaughn character as well, and the other characters that they introduce in here. I think they do continue on as reoccurring characters, so I give it 4 out of 5 Vulcan salutes, right? Excellent book, very well written, never got bored with any particular storyline, and plenty of nice little surprises and characters thrown in there to keep it interesting, keep it moving along. So, and again, as with all these books, it is a cliffhanger. You're going to find the salute, or the ending, the real ending in the big cliffhanger book, which I don't know where I put. It's here somewhere, but all the endings to all these books are in the final book, which we'll get to, and then we'll have the full conclusion here. So, again, it's kind of a weird cover, because the two characters there aren't like the main characters that they would focus on. Imagine a Lieutenant Nog cover. That would have been, that was the way they should have went. Would Nog sell books? I think he would. He should. Anyway, I'm going to kind of go into the old ranting and raving section of the channel for now, so you can tune on out if you don't want to hear that. So, the book takes place at the same time as the last book. So the chaos has broken out in the galaxy, all of the Iconian gateways have lit up, started up, and it's causing chaos everywhere. However, in this part of the galaxy, around Deep Space Nine and Bajor, for whatever reason, there is no gateway activity. So that is one of the things they have to figure out, right? So, again, you have several different storylines coming together. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. The story starts out in the Delta Quadrant, where you are met with the Malon. So if you remember the Malon, they had like a ship full of like toxic radiation that they had to dump off, right? It looked like this. These little tanks were filled up with radiation. At least I think that's it. Maybe it's upside down. I don't know. This way? Anyway, the Malon coming along, right? Coming along, get attacked by a Herogen. And then in the process of defending themselves from the Herogen, the gateway opens, and this Malon captain sees a way to get like 2 birds with 1 stone. And they jet and vent all of their waste into this gateway, making it somebody else's problem. And in the process, that destroys the Herogen ship. And they think that they've succeeded in doing that, and they just continue to dump off their trash, right? And that's how the story starts. Now, back around Deep Space Nine, they have on Earth in the last book, when everything started going down, all the gateways open, they called this big meeting. So now you get to see this book side of that meeting. In the last book, you were on Captain Picard's side of that, so now you're on another side of that meeting, and I like that too. That was cool to see another version of the same thing happening, right? So anyway, Deep Space Nine is given its orders. They are to assist in the evacuation of Europa Nova, which is the planet basically where all of this radiation has now come out of the gateway and is infecting. So they have to do a mass evacuation of the planet with as many ships and things that are possibly able to do so. So there's your main, foil in the book. That's what they've got to do, and they just barely have enough to get it done, right? I mean, and right now, like they're kind of figuring that out, trying to figure out exactly the best way to do it and get everybody off, right? So, Ram and Tathena, who's this Andorian who takes over as like the science officer on the ship, they are tasked with finding out why there is not any, radiation or any gateways in this area. So they're looking around trying to figure it out, and between the two of them, they come up with the Denarius belt, which is like the big belt that kind of goes around the area. That is somehow affecting the gateways and how they operate. So they didn't put any over there, right? So they take that one step further, and this Cathane is able to come up with a way to shut down that, shut down a gateway using the information they gleaned from that, what they learned by studying that belt, right? So now they got a plan to do that. Okay. Elias Vaughn, interesting character. So again, he's the commanding officer in charge, the Starfleet officer. Kira is ahead of him, Colonel Kira. So Vaughn is an interesting character. He's kind of like an older guy, and I believe this is the first book that I've read that features him in it. So I'm looking forward to getting to know his character more. But from the little bit that he's in here, I do like him, and I want to know more about his past and kind of where he's going. So the other, I guess, thread in this story here is what is going on with Quark. And Quark has been called in by the Orions to act as a negotiator on their behalf. And they are negotiating with the Iconians for their gateway technology, right? So they get together on an Orion ship. They bring Quark in, and he brings a Dabble girl along, for good luck and company. And who is the negotiator on the side of the Iconians? None other than Gala, Quark's cousin. So if you watch a lot of Deep Space Nine, there was a lot of back and forth that happened between the two of them. So anyway, put that back up there. Gala is so now you have this interesting other side story that you get to dip into every now and then, where Quark and Gala are negotiating back and forth to get the rights for this portal, right? So that's another interesting and very fun part of the book that I like to read. Always like reading more Quark stuff, and he's written very well here too. Just the whole part with the negotiations between the two of them is just very well done. The Orions are pretty cool. I like how they're described. And it's just, I guess it's interesting how you can see that there's kind of like something more going on that's kind of developing, right? And like it's going to drop at some point. So you have that story going on. You have Nog and Tashane, I'm going to say his name different and wrong every time, trying to figure out how to shut this down. And then the other kind of the final thread, I guess, that they're doing is Kira decides that she needs to figure out where the radiation is coming from. So she takes a shuttlecraft with her Jem'Hadar, diplomatic emissary, right? So he's sent over from the Dominion, been given orders to follow Kira's orders and do whatever she says. So her and Terran Attar, the Dominion guy, very old soldier, right? They go to the other side of the portal, and then this is where you're getting a really good part of the action comes in here too, of course. When they get to the other side of the portal, they find the Malon ship. All the Malon aboard are dead, right? And the ship is inhabited by the Hirogen Hunter, all right? So he lures Terran Targ basically over there, and then they begin this kind of hunt between the two of them. While Kira escapes, gets back to the shuttlecraft, uses it to block up the gateway and kind of slow down the radiation, giving the people on Europa Nova a little bit more time to escape. And then she gets down to a planet, sends the shuttle back up there. Unfortunately, the planet she gets down to is hot, dry, and she has a limited amount of time before she's dead, basically. So that's what's going on with her. Terran Attar, and the Hirogen Hunter, who slaughtered all the Malon, basically, and they were like no prey for him. He's now happy that he's got like a good prey. So now you have this interesting little fight on the Malon ship between the two of them, where he's stalking them and they're kind of going back and forth, right? Back to Quark, right? So things... Oh, back to Nog first. They get permission to try this thing to shut the gateways down. They turn it on, and boom, it works. Back in the negotiations, now everything goes kind of crazy. The Iconians are like, oh no, the things have went down. The Orions are like, well, don't you know why this is going on? And now everybody can kind of see through, the Iconians, and that they don't really have control. The Iconians, right? They don't really have control of this gateway. There's something more going on here, okay? So now unfortunately, whatever they do, the gateways reboot and they do turn back on. But it's long enough where kind of like the jig is up. And this is when Quark realizes that they've got to get out of there. And that's when Quark's Dabo girl realizes it's time to reveal herself as Ro-Laren, the new security chief aboard Deep Space Nine. So she throws some tassels, one of them blows up, one of them's like a flash grenade. They're able to escape, and they have a ship nearby which beams them out, and then they even go back in the end to save Gala. And then Quark even goes back to save Gala because, family is family, right? So, again, Ro-Laren coming in, that was a big surprise. I did not expect or know that she even was a part of, like, the Deep Space Nine book series. So I'm wondering if she's one of the new characters that he mentions in this as someone he introduces here that carries on. Also, there was an Orion slave girl that was there during the negotiations as well, and Ro grabs her, bumps into the Chief Orion, steals his pad, and escapes with the pad and the girl. And her name is, I think, Faith? I don't know. But she might also come as a character down the road, too. So they all escape safely. When the Orions realize that the Iconians are not really who they say they are and do what they say they do, they start fighting. The Iconians fight back, blast them and blow them up, and get the heck out of Dodge. We all know that they are not really Iconians. They are the Petrol introduced in the beginning of this book series and kind of taking the place of the Iconians to get what they can out of this, right? So that kind of covers that end of the story. Back on the evacuation end, there's a whole lot of story that I'm missing, and we'll kind of try to cover that as much as we can. One thing that I thought was pretty cool was they're assisted by a Cardassian Gul, and it is none other than Gul Macet. And Gul Macet was featured in TNG in the episode where they tracked down the renegade Starfleet guy who was trying to attack Cardassians, right? And he was played by Mark Alamo, of course, Gul Dukat, right? So they make mention here in the book of how he looks like Dukat, and then he's like, well, yeah, Dukat's my cousin. I get that all the time, unfortunately. So I think also this Gul Macet is going to be a character maybe that plays more of an impact down the road. Garrick is also in this book in a few fun little moments where he's totally knows what's going on and just kind of is able to take care of business, and just a few fun little moments that he gets in there which are really interesting. So for the evacuation, right, they have to fill up as many ships as they can, take them to Deep Space Nine and to Bajor, offload them, come back. They've also discovered a gateway on this planet, and that goes to the planet Gerada. Now the Gerada, they are a little bit not very nice, and they don't initially want to get people there, and then Vaughn is able to negotiate with them a little bit, and they agree to house 500,000, so they can send 500,000 through this gateway. So now they're working and struggling to get all the rest of these people off of the planet, and that's where one of the other kind of little final thrills of the book comes in, is they're getting the final last people off, and they're able to get everybody safely off and safely treated for radiation, and just a happy ending altogether, right? But this is a Gateways book, and because it's a Gateways book, you're going to have your little bit of a cliffhanger, right? So, finishing up in the Delta Quadrant on the Malon vessel, Terran Attar and the Hirogen are going kind of back and forth, and the Hirogen thinks that he's got him killed finally. He drives his sword into his chest, and then he turns around and realizes, they've got like 5 minutes before this whole ship is going to go up. They've got to get out of there, right? So, as he's turning around, Terran Attar gets up, picks up this guy's weapon, and, what does he say in the end, too? It was really good. It was like, shoot. And I don't even have it. Oh, I got it right here. The Alpha smiled. I'm gonna read this part to you. I never do that. I should do that more. It is time I took my leave, the Alpha thought. He had one disappointing hunt, but one great one with a foe he had never thought he'd face. Ultimately, that was what mattered. The Jem'Hadar had been the most worthy prey. He was about to turn when a clattering sound drew his attention. The Alpha spun to see the Jem'Hadar struggling to his feet, the Hirogen's rifle in his hand. The Alpha smiled. Truly, this is worthy prey. Blood trickling out of his mouth, the Jem'Hadar spoke, every word sounding like an effort. Victory is life. Then he pulled the trigger. Cool, right? So yeah, he pulls the trigger, blows the guy up, escapes, makes it to the escape vessel. When he scans down to the planet where Kira escaped, he scans once, and she has very low life signs. Scans again, and she's gone. He thinks she's dead. He bails for the thing and gets back to DS9 to give his report. The final scene in the book here, this is your cliffhanger scene. Kira Nerys is going through the desert, nearly dead, right? She approaches the gateway, but when she gets there right at the moment when it shuts down. So then it picks back up later, the gateway comes back on, she is nearly dead. The gateway is flashing between DS9. Hey, who turned out the lights? The lights are back on. Deep Space Nine, right? And then the Prophets. And figuring that she's already dead, she jumps through the portal into the land of the Prophets or whatever. Dun dun dun. There is your cliffhanger, and there is Gateways, book 4 of 7. So, man, yeah, that was fun. I struggled to focus because just having trouble focusing lately. But when I was able to sit down and give it time, man, I really got into it. It took me 13 days to read, which is ridiculous. I could have finished it in 4, 3, and I should have. So I could just keep reading more and more of these fantastic books and keep talking about them with all of you, my lovely friends here, who sit down with me and listen to me talk about Star Trek books every now and then, right? It's fun. So, again, there were some interesting notes here that came out of this, and I guess what I really pulled from the book about books was I liked how that he took this book and took the opportunity of writing this book and then the ending to this, which features in the last book, to drive his vision and story and characters for Deep Space Nine forward. So I thought that was really interesting, and I liked that a lot. And I just like reading Star Trek books a lot, right? And I'm glad you all are here with me. So, as always, everybody, thank you for hanging out here and listening. We're going to dive right into the Voyager book next. Actually, let me go grab that now. Yeah, here we go. Man, this is a little one. This is just a little guy. So let's compare and contrast here. Right? It's a littler one. A smaller book. So, Gateways 5 of 7, No Man's Land by Christy Golden. Coming up next. I'm going to read this thing in like 2 days and I'll be back to talk about it super soon. Don't quote me on that. that might not happen. Alright, anyway, live long and prosper. We'll see you guys in the next video. Good night.